Salvete discipuli. Today's video is another fairly short video from chapter 13 in Latin for the New Millennium. We're going to learn two new uses of the genitive. So far you only know one use of the genitive, so this will bring the total number up to 3. And then we'll talk about how to use the genitive when you're using the first and second person pronouns, okay? Okay, so uses of the genitive. This actually is all on one slide, so I promised a fairly short video, and it is. Okay, so let's talk genitive case. The only use of the genitive that you have learned up until now is that it shows possession, okay? And that is a very, very common, probably the most common use of the genitive case. But there are some other somewhat common uses that you should begin to learn. And by begin to learn, I mean, you know, learn. But this is your first introduction to them. The first of these is called the partitive genitive, okay? It's also sometimes known as the genitive of the whole because it's going to tell you this whole unit from which a little part is being taken, okay? Which is why it's sometimes called genitive of the whole. The partitive genitive, the part in partitive genitive is because very often this is used with the Latin word pars partus, which means part. So an example of this in English would be part of the citizens voted for the measure, part did not. So when you say part of the citizens is the bigger whole, and the part is the smaller part taken out of it, but it's the bigger whole that's in the genitive, or at least for the partitive genitive. Now what's really nice about partitive genitive is that it still translates of whatever, right? So if you have that translation in mind, then partitive genitive isn't so bad. It's not possession, but it still translates of the whatever. So I give you an example here in this sentence, pauci puerorum in silvam fugiant. So a few of the boys, so the boys is the bigger whole, the few is being taken out of it. A few of the boys fugiant in silvam, flee into the forest, okay? Use here of the partitive genitive. Another genitive use that you're learning in this chapter is something called the objective genitive. Now, the objective genitive is actually really interesting. It's when a genitive is joined to a noun that is in some way expressing an action, right? It's a noun that's very closely related to a verb. So, for example, the noun amor, right, which means love, is closely related to the verb amo, which means love. Same for timor, right? Fear is closely related to the verb timeo, to fear. Now, the thing about the objective genitive is that very often it translates not of, well, sometimes it'll translate of, but sometimes it'll translate for. So, for example, amor matris mei magnus est. Love for my mother is great, okay? Now, in this example, the matris mei is, of course, our objective genitive, and it's telling us who is receiving the love. Now, of course, love is a noun here, right? But it's related to a verb, and this is essentially telling us the object, so to say, object, I need two quotes, of the love, so objective genitive, or if you want to think about it a different way, who's receiving the love? My mother. So the love for my mother is great. Okay, so that is the three uses you now know of the genitive case, possession, partitive, and objective genitives. And the last thing really I need to tell you is that first and second person pronouns never use their genitives to show possession. Never, ever, ever. And there's a really, really good reason for this. The reason is because they have adjectives that will show possession. So you don't need to say the book of me, right, to say my book. You can use the adjective meus liber, my book. So why do they have genitive cases? Well, because They are used, the genitive case shows partitive or objective or one of other uses of the genitive that we will learn in the future. So if ever you see a genitive for the first or second person pronouns, that's ego, tu, nos, and vos, okay? If you see the genitive for one of those four pronouns, it's going to be partitive or objective for right now. So for example, omnes nostri, all of us, partitive genitive. Or if I want to say, my love for you, and again, this is the objective genitive associated with the timor. Or I could be talking, or amor, or I could be talking about the timor. I could be talking about my fear of you. And that's actually a nice counterpart because again, the objective genitive can sometimes translate tui, amor tui, love for you, but it can sometimes translate of you, like if this were timor, my fear of you. And there you go. All right, short little lesson. Take good notes. Make sure that you have taken notes, not just on what was on the slide, but also what I said. You should have translations for each of those phrases and sentences. Even though they weren't written on the slide, you should be paying attention to what I say. All right, have an amazing evening, and I will see you in class. Walete.